Welcome back to a special edition episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. I'm Mel, and I'm joined today with Dan. He's a good friend of our family, and he's actually in town doing a challenge with Joe. Joe's recovering a bit right now, but I feel really excited to have him on today. Dan, if you could tell us a little bit about your family and your background, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. First, I want to say thanks to the Hashi family for hosting me for a few days. But I have two teenage daughters, a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. I married my high school sweetheart, and we've been married for 20 years now. And we live in upstate New York. I'm a school social worker. She's a second grade teacher. And I think all of that has helped us raise our two daughters to hopefully be successful young adults very soon. We have our oldest going off to college in the fall.
That's right. We were talking about that the other day. That's exciting. Or is it? What's that like for you guys having one transition out of the home, at least to college?
It's exciting. It's new. It's a path that we haven't taken yet. So we're learning, and we'll probably have to make some adjustments for our next one, I'm sure. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. I'm not sure how much she's looking forward to it. There's some days she's excited and other days I think she's nervous. But it's a path that we're excited about venturing on. We expect our kids to hopefully open up more doors for us as parents down the road. Maybe they move out of the state and they bring us to somewhere else and stuff like that.
That's true. You never know where they're going to end up, and then where you will end up. That was certainly part of our story. We didn't expect to be out here in Colorado. So we had talked earlier, we were just chatting at the table about you taking trips with your family and that being an important thing that you started fairly recently.
No, when the girls were younger, we did the Disney trip a couple of times. And I think Disney can be great for a family, but it's one thing and it's very commercialized and everything. So as they got older, I wanted them to experience more things than just going to Disney World. I like the outdoors, and that's one reason why I'm here. And so the way I started to look at things is national parks and getting them outside. And I looked at airports and that were easy to fly into and out of. So I'd look at a major airport and then basically draw a 600-mile radius and try to find as many national parks or so that would be in that radius, and then try to plan a 2-week trip in the summer, because my wife and I both have the summers off with the kids, which has been really nice. We have a privilege of working a schedule that's identical to our children in school. So when there's snow days, we have the snow days. When the kids are off for holidays or the summer, we also have them. That's really helped with raising a family too, I think.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. You had the summers open to be able to do whatever you wanted to do with them. So instead of just sitting home or sending them to camp, you actually set up this really cool trip. So I'd love to hear maybe more detail about one of them and how you think it impacted your family, like the bond within your family.
Things that I think come out of these trips, like obviously you want to see these spectacular views and epic sights, but I think when you're in a car and you're stuck in a car and you're driving and you're looking around and you're seeing what that part of the country looks like, it's very brown maybe, or whatever it may be, how different it is from say upstate New York. Those are things that you don't really plan on, but that's where I think things come out. The conversations just randomly start happening because we're in the car for 5 or more hours just heading to a new destination that we've never been to together. So that's one thing. Another outdoor activity that I think does that well is skiing. You're stuck on a chairlift and it's cold. You can't have a phone in your hand. So you're stuck there riding up a chairlift and you get to look to your kid to the side of you and you have a conversation and you're in the middle of the outdoors. Those are things that you can't plan around, but they happen and they force good conversations, I think.
So did you ever walk away from one of those trips and think, had we not taken this trip, I wouldn't have necessarily created this bond with my daughters or even my wife?
Yeah. So I never got to experience them. I did the Disney World trip as a child with my family, but I never got to see the national parks. But my mom, I remember her talking about seeing some of these national parks when she was a child. And I looked up to my grandfathers greatly, and I know that this was something they took pride in, is traveling with their family when they could. And so it was something that I wanted to experience personally because I never got to experience it. And I wanted to experience it with my children because I remember my mom would talk about how she took the trips as a child and the bonding she had with her siblings and stuff in the car rides and all that kind of stuff. And they had a camper at the time. We don't have a camper, but they did it in a camper. So taking the trip in that way and taking note of how it impacted my mom and her life, it made me want to bring that into my life, which I never actually had that.
Sounds like you had that seed of that idea planted in you, and then you were able to actually follow through on it. One of the things we talk about on the podcast a lot is reflecting back on your experience as a kid things that your family did or didn't do, and then you can make different decisions for your family. And it sounds like you took this piece that was really important to your mom, or at least you saw that your mom was impacted by it, and you were able to draw it into your family. And did you have a thought?
Yeah, I think my family has impacted me greatly, not on what I wanted to do based on what I experienced, but a lot of how I wanted to make differences and changes from what I experienced as a child. So the things that I wish I experienced as a child, I wanted to make sure my children experienced it. And I also really thought it was important that I, as a father, who I was a role model, I always looked at myself as I might be role modeling maybe my daughter's future husband. And I wanted to portray that person the best I could. And that might be taking vacations. It might just be doing the things that I think I need to do around the home and how I love my wife and everything else. And I want them to be loved the same way I love my wife. So all those things I might not have experienced the same way as a child, but I knew I wanted my kids to have it.
That's awesome. So we talked about the big picture things, like you go on a vacation, go on a trip, and that's what a lot of families do. A big piece of the podcast that we try to do in our family is bring it to like the daily level. So are there things that you feel like you've done on a daily basis to be there for your kids or to be there for your wife and role model for them? I don't know. Is there like an after school thing that you do with them or a way you communicate with them?
We're connected. I'd love to say that we have dinner every night together. With a 16 and 18-year-old, it just doesn't happen, and they're very active people. But whenever we can, it's at least a couple times a week that we have to have the four of us sitting around a table, and there's no other distractions, and we try to talk about what's happening in their lives. And we're fortunate, and like we were talking earlier, I'm not sure what I did as a parent when my children were younger, but they open up to us, and I feel like they share a lot of things, and it's not like we have to pull teeth to have a good conversation sometimes. And sometimes, yeah, they don't share a lot, and we do have to pull a little bit of teeth. But for the most part, they've been good kids, and they've been fairly easy to raise. And I want to say I'm a lucky dad and parent for having such good kids, but obviously there's things that we've done that I wish I knew what was the magic sauce that we did to help them be such good kids, which I'm admiring with you and Joe and raising your boys, is that I feel like you have a lot of intention behind what you're doing. And I lack that. I think, what our intention was. I just knew what we wanted, but we didn't put it down on paper like you guys are.
That's such a great point, because I have come to this conclusion while I've been talking on the podcast, where sometimes you get this feeling like there's something I need to do. There's a direction I want to go. I might not have a strategy, which is what we're trying to do with the 7 steps, right? You're trying to give families strategy around organized and the word organized sounds boring, but like you add some strategy to the home and you can almost accomplish more. So I appreciate that you had that feeling, that sense that there was something you were doing. You might not know exactly put your finger on it, but there was some push, something that was pushing you towards being more intentional as a dad.
Yeah. One thing, having daughters, like I'm an affectionate person. Like I go in my daughter's bedroom still at 16, 18 every night and have to give them a kiss before they go to bed. And I remember them always being young and always in front of them, always like giving my wife a hug and a kiss and being like, guess who I love? And showing them like, guess who I love? And I love your mom, and smooching her up, and they'd be like, oh, that's gross. And I'd
Right.
be like, but I love your mom. And like, just really making sure I expressed how much love I had for their mom. And I want them to know that's how a man should love them, is with all that love, and not just be there and help pay the bills or whatever it may be. There's a lot more to it. And
I really admire that. I admire your intentionality with your wife to make sure that they see what they should look for in a man. That's really special. We're raising 3 boys, and our goal is to raise 3 strong men that would attract someone who would appreciate those things and that they would mesh together really well. So this is one thing that occurred to me. What are some things you do with Lori to stay connected with her? Because we talk a lot about kids on the podcast, but it's equally important to keep the marriage bond strong. And now that we're not at that age of college yet, but eventually your daughters will, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but like you'll be home with Lori, and I'm wondering, what do you do with her to stay bonded as a couple?
That's a good question, because we do like to experience. We travel, like we're excited about if we have to go somewhere for, say, my daughter's travel soccer, or now that my daughter's going to go to college and we're doing college visits, like what can we do as a couple that separates us from the kids for a day or a night or something like that. We do a lot of activities. Like we enjoy hiking. My wife, she's slow to influence on things, which we're very opposite in a lot of ways. She's a super cautious person who likes to take things very slow with, I'll try it, but it's like the no thank you helping for a long period of time where I'll like, yeah, just give me a bowl of it and I'll eat it all. So she will dabble in some of the things that I enjoy, like going outside and adventuring and stuff like that. And then we find the things that we have common interest in, and we'll go hiking a lot and those kinds of things, just the two of us. Yeah, she still is actively involved in playing soccer. I don't play soccer. So like I will go and watch her play soccer, and she will take interest in what I'm doing. Like with some of these difficult challenges that she doesn't have an interest in breaking her body the same way I like to break my body. But
I know what that's, Lori. I totally get it.
Yeah. So even though we may not do the same things, we have an interest in what the other one's doing. Like I go out on a Friday night, her soccer team meets up for like some snacks and a drink or whatever after their soccer game when they have their co-ed soccer games, and I'll meet there and I get to know the soccer team and how's the games and how did everybody do and that kind of stuff. So like I have an interest in what she likes and what she does. It's not that I necessarily do it with her.
That's such a good point. So obviously when you're a couple, you're not going to all like the same things. So you find things to do together and you work it in with your kids' schedule. Like if you're out, like you said, at a soccer tournament, but then you also support each other in your own individual interests, which is really true. So you're here now and you just did a big challenge with my husband. And I guess I want to know a little bit about how you got into being interested in these big challenges. Maybe I'm asking because I'm always curious. I live with a person who does these and I get where he's coming from, but you're someone else that I could ask this question to.
So I'm going to open up another door that we haven't brought into the conversation. So I'm a childhood cancer survivor. I'm an amputee, and facing certain challenges in life at an early age, it was difficult, and people feel bad that as a child going through what I had to go through, but it was something where I had to learn to get through it, and it taught me a lot, and it gave me more confidence. It gave me a chance to experience successes in life of how to overcome something very difficult. And those things I know take work and time, and you can't just get that overnight. And I think that planted the seed of, I know I'm a stronger person than most people think they usually are, is because I went through those difficult things. So then now in life, like obviously I don't want to face a life-threatening illness to feel the success of beating it or whatever, but a really hard challenge gives me that feeling again, I'm strong, I can do things that most people don't think they're capable of because they just don't even think that they can, or they don't try. And every time I do something that's difficult, even if I fail, like I grow in some way and I find strength in it, and it gives me more confidence to try something new or bigger. It's not like I can go, like the first day that I wanted to do something difficult outside, like with Joe or whatever, it wasn't like we went out and did what we did last night. It was something smaller, but then that grew to something bigger, and realizing it. The same thing when your husband and I used to do pond dips. Like the first time you get in the pond when it was frozen, it was like, oh man, we made it 30 seconds. And then after a while, it's, oh, we can do this. And on you can be in there for 10, 15 minutes and it's not so bad.
That's right. You get like incrementally stronger and more willing to try harder because you know you can do it. So another thing that we touch on in the podcast is you are who you spend time with. And we're super thankful to have met you and to connect with your family because it helps us to grow when we're around people who also have similar values. So do you find that's the case like in your family, like with your daughter's friends, or do you focus on like you are who you spend time with? You know, you're going to move forward with people who are moving forward. Like Joe's always looking for people to do hard things with. You guys rucked for 50 miles yesterday, and that's amazing. And I love that we are friends with someone who's willing to do that as well.
It can be a challenge because not everyone likes the same things that you like. And as, for example, Joe and I to do things that a lot of people don't think are fun.
That's a good point.
So we have acquaintances and friends at home with our daughter's friends, parents and stuff like that we get along with, and we like to hang out with them. But obviously some of them choose to live lifestyles that we're just not up to. We just don't like to go out and do a lot of the things that sometimes adults do, and we'd rather go outside and take a long hike or do something difficult and something like that. So it can be challenging to find those people you want to surround yourself with, but I think when you find them, you keep them there, and you're willing to find ways to get back together. And hence that's why I hopped on a plane to come out here, because it's not easy to find another Joe Hashie. So I got to get on a plane to go hang out with Joe Hashie.
And we feel the same way about you. It's hard to find a Dan Kosik. It really is. So we really appreciate that you came out all this way. One final question for you as we wrap it up. If you were to look back to young Dan, and this could be like before you had kids or when you first got married, what kind of advice do you wish you had that would have helped you in your family life?
I'm a control freak, and I feel like I just need to let things go a little bit. Like, it was just with a lot. I plan. Your husband Joe knows this. I like to plan everything out, and it's because I really want to make sure I know everything that's going to happen, but that's impossible. So I would just like to just emphasize to my younger self that, like, sometimes you just have to let it happen, or sometimes you just figure it out when it comes, and not always feel like you always have to have it planned out, because it gets stressful. If it doesn't go to plan, then you stress out about things that are out of your control, and you got to be able to chill out and stuff. That adds years to your life, or takes away years to your life if you're stressing about things you can't control.
That's great advice. I know yesterday, Joe came to me before he went to pick you up, and he's, get ready. Dan's going to come with a lot of questions. He's going to want to know times and things. And then I screwed up today because I didn't even get to get down there and watch you guys finish. But that's great advice, to be able to step back and try to not control everything and just not be anxious about things that you might not even have control over. Yep. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate the conversation. It was really fun. Yeah,
I'm so glad we can make this happen, even how sleepy I am.
I truly appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us on a special edition episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. Till next time.